What a privilege to have your attention today. So, I'm sharing what has been my experience of the infinite life. I started out, being an engineer with a chemical engineering degree, knowing that there was something eternal, knowing that there was something more meaningful to life, and always having my foot in that realm. And then I did the Landmark Forum, and I recognized that so many of my thoughts were creating my reality, and they weren't based on anything true. At that point, my whole life direction shifted. No longer was I so focused on making sure that I covered my bases as far as security goes. I was doing that way more than I needed to. Instead, I became interested in sensing into what is this reality that is totally independent of thoughts and interpretations. What is truly simply perceived, not understood, not interpreted. I began various practices. I ended up leaving my corporate job. And then after a couple years, I went on a silent retreat. Now, at that silent retreat, I was hoping to be enlightened. And I didn't know what that was. But in my head, it was somehow having a more intimate experience with the infinite. Well, after a few days in the retreat, I noticed that I was wasting the retreat hoping for something that wasn't there. I totally let that go and just relaxed into enjoying the retreat. The next morning when I woke up, I had no thoughts creating an individual identity. There was no particular Lisa. I saw all those thoughts that I had used to have that were creating a Lisa. And that's all they were thoughts. Without them, my experience was just this one aliveness, unfolding everything that is. Emerging as me, emerging as every person in the world, emerging as everything in the world. This single aliveness, this awareness, infinite consciousness, it was the master choreographer moving everything. And as it moved us towards and away from each other, we could create stories defining why we thought that was happening. But those were only stories. This divine harmony was moving everything in a perfect choreography. Now, I stayed with that for a couple weeks. I was surprised I could still drive a car. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to. Movies did not make sense. I had a coaching call with a client, and as she described her problems, I couldn't see any problem there. Then, after a few weeks, the thoughts of an independent Lisa, of a Lisa identity, started coming back. What a surprise! What was their purpose? I had no idea, but I was curious. Why would this infinite aliveness be interested in allowing back in these thoughts? So I investigated them and I questioned them. And I noticed that along with those were sometimes thoughts that thought that things that were happening were wrong. There would be thoughts, oh, that shouldn't happen, or I shouldn't be like this, or that person should be such and such. All of those thoughts were merely thoughts. So I started questioning them all. I knew that all these thoughts were just a house of cards, and that beneath it was still this alive awareness that was moving everything. And I could tap into that, but I could also get confused by the other thoughts. I spent the next several years investigating those thoughts, developing tools to dismantle those thoughts, and delving deeper into what is this that I am? What is this aliveness that enjoys apparent chaos at times, enjoys apparent pain at times? What is this? As I explored all of these things, I developed many practices that became really helpful. And then this more gradual shift has happened where I can't find a Lisa. I can assemble those thoughts if I want to use the idea of a Lisa, but I can't find any Lisa. What I can always feel, what is the dominant experience, is this infinite awareness unfolding as life, and not even needing that unfolding, as this vast emptiness, this vast radiance that doesn't need anything, is totally self sufficient, totally fulfilled, totally unharmable. I feel this is what I am. I feel this that I am is that which creates war, is that which creates pain, is that which creates death, because all of these are part of its master weaving that it's creating. It's totally fearless, really fearless, totally courageous, amazingly strong, amazingly willing to dive into anything that from our human perspective might seem all mucky. And as I'm in touch with this, I feel no withdrawal from anything in the world. It's all an experience of this infinite aliveness. My life has just become this outflowing of life and this welcoming of every experience. Everything that happens is just a movement out of the joy of this being. All the time I want sitting quietly, or I can spend all the time I want helping somebody else, or I can spend all the time I want out in nature. It doesn't really matter. All are the same. I could be doing something that looks very tedious, paying taxes or cleaning up after somebody at the hospital who's made a mess. Any of those things are all equally expressing this alive awareness. There's no difference between any action. It's all the same expression. From this experience now, life is play, completely play. And it is amazing how I'll have something that I want and all of a sudden it's happening in my life. Because it's not a Lisa want. It's a want coming out of this infinite aliveness. For example, a business plopped itself in my lap and I drew out what I'd like the space for it to be. And lo and behold, the space that we found has windows on the east side and the south side, exactly like my drawing had. Things like that just keep happening because all the wants are coming out of this infinite aliveness. For you, this may feel like a very familiar experience, or maybe you've had glimmers of it, or maybe it feels like a completely unfamiliar, distant experience. Well, if you're interested in experiencing it more, I would like to just give one tool of the many that I've used as something to leave you with, and that is the three wells. Anytime life threw something that was totally confusing, it just seemed out of place, like something had gone wrong, I could stop and deepen in first the well of compassion. That's the aspect that says, it's all right. Of course I'm feeling upset. Of course I'm feeling sad. Of course I'm feeling hurt. This is all part of what our human conditioning includes. There's this warm embrace. Next is the well of wise attention. And this is where, rather than jumping in to solve it from my human perspective, there's this spaciousness that opens up, knowing that there's a wise understanding available that doesn't see this as any kind of disaster, that has the acceptance and the wisdom to move through it. And then I move on to the well of unattached action. And that is the part that simply has total willingness to take whatever is the next step. No need to procrastinate, no need to worry about it, no need to attach to how I want it to turn out. Simply taking the next step with curiosity and discovery. By dipping into these three wells, I found it easier when I was stuck in a Lisa, oh my gosh, why is this happening moment, and switched back into the infinite aliveness, this great awareness, knowing that all is right.